Don Kendall has been to Pepsi-Cola what Duncan Hines has been to Cake Mix. He co-founded PepsiCo and spent more than two decades as its chief executive officer. Under his leadership, the corporation achieved a leadership position in 3 of the largest and fastest growing consumer markets: beverages, snack foods, and restaurants. His work values were ingrained early in his life in McLean County, Kentucky, and later as the son of a Washington State farmer. Don was recruited to play football for his high school team, but when his coach sought the approval of Don's father, the approval came with the knowledge and understanding that the milk cows on his father's farm would be waiting for him when he finished his daily practice. It was that kind of work ethic which helped him lead PepsiCo to become one of the 25 largest corporations in the country. Don retired as PepsiCo's chairman and chief operating officer in 1986 and is currently the chairman of that corporation's foundation. Susan and I visited with Don Kendall last winter at PepsiCo headquarters in Purchase, New York. His interest in and support for the arts is evident everywhere at the Purchase, New York site. The gardens there have been voted as one of the top 10 sculpture gardens in the entire world, and that came about under his leadership. From his involvement in bringing Baryshnikov to America, to expanding the Pepsi market to the USSR, Don Kendall has continued to exhibit his well-known leadership.
He's featured in the book Executive Breakthrough, and if you measure success by leadership abilities, Donald Kendall is among the best. His college days were shortened by World War II, but his early sales and marketing techniques while at Western in 1942 hinted of future success for the entrepreneurial Kendall.
He said he went to work for a little insignificant salary, and he talked the owner into giving him a commission, one percentage for anybody that came in and bought clothes from him, the second percentage and a lesser percentage from anybody that came in the store and said, look, Don Kendall sent me in here to buy me some clothes. He got him some business cards printed, stood out in front of Cherry Hall, and he said if there were one student on his campus that he failed to get a business card to, he didn't know it. He made so much money in his commission-type system that the owner changed the plan and put him back and wanted to put him back on salary. Proved something about Don Kendall, I think.
After being hired as a fountain syrup sales representative for Pepsi-Cola following the war, it didn't take long for Kendall to rise through the ranks of the Cola Corporation. In less than 15 years, he was president and chief executive officer of the company. His marketing of Pepsi-Cola in foreign markets in the late 1950s resulted in the tripling of sales, and a 1958 trip taken by Kendall to Russia garnered priceless attention for Pepsi.
So we went, and because of the criticism I had back home, I told then Vice President Nixon that I had to get Khrushchev by our kiosk and give him a Pepsi. And Nixon fortunately brought him by. When he came by, I had Pepsi from New York, and I had Pepsi that we'd made locally, and I told him that I wanted him to taste the two to show him that we could make Pepsi in the Soviet Union. And of course, as soon as he tried it, he immediately told everybody that the one made in the Soviet Union was a better product. And he proceeded to drink one Pepsi after another and pass them out. And the cameras were going like mad, taking pictures of Khrushchev drinking Pepsi. Our advertising slogan at the time was, "Be sociable, have a Pepsi."
While many, including those within the Pepsi ranks, thought promoting an American product to a Cold War adversary was too risky, Kendall says taking risks is what life is all about.
In life, you have to take risks. An entrepreneur is not an entrepreneur if he's not taking risks. I think you have to take risks in everything you do in life, or you don't have a very full life.
Such risks led to the merger Kendall engineered in 1965 between Pepsi-Cola and Frito-Lay, the nation's leading snack food marketer, creating PepsiCo Incorporated. 6 years later, Kendall was elected chairman and chief executive officer of the corporation he led until his retirement in 1986. Throughout his career, Kendall has been active in cultural, economic, and political organizations. He received the first NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund Equal Justice Award in 1986 and was inducted into the 1987 National Business Hall of Fame. And his interest and dedication to the arts led to collections in the Donald M. Kendall Sculpture Gardens that surround PepsiCo's headquarters in Purchase, New York. Success has surrounded Kendall, but it hasn't come without the belief in some solid work values.
Our people coming out of school today really have to realize that they just can't start up in middle management, start in the planning and so forth, that they have to get out, certainly in our business, and I think that's true of a lot of businesses, and get, for example, on the route truck, you don't have to stay there a long time, but you ought to learn how it functions. You ought to work in the plants and find out how they work and what those people have to do so that you know the business from the ground up.
He knows not only the business from the ground up, but how to climb the ladder as well. 1994 Hall of Distinguished Alumni inductee, Donald Kendall.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I really wish in hearing this that my mother and father could be here and hear these wonderful things that have been said about me, and I'm sure my mother would probably even believe it. You know, it's wonderful to come back here and see some old friends. Lee Robertson and I have been friends for years, both coming from part of my life in Calhoun, and to see Darrell Downing again, and then I found out that tonight that Darrell's wife was in the Flying Girados, which we both were in a play when I was here in school, and I want to say the same thing that I said. Some of you may have been there when I gave the commencement address several years ago, how honored I was to be invited back here. And when I was called about being a member of the Distinguished Alumni, I couldn't quite believe it because those of you who know anything about me, I didn't graduate from Western Kentucky, and I was only here for a year and a half when the war started, and I went off and became a Navy pilot. And it's perfectly obvious that the committee didn't get a chance to talk to any of the professors or the teachers that I had. Unfortunately, when I went to school, the same was when Lee was here, they didn't have computers and tapes and so forth to keep records of what your academic achievements were. So I'm really honored to be here, and I'm glad that none of you know about those records. And when Tom and Susan came up to see me, you could tell they were so young, you knew darn well they didn't know what the record was. But seriously, it's a real honor, and I'm sorry that my wife is not here tonight. She's in Germany visiting her mother, so otherwise she would have been here for this occasion, and my family all knows about this, and I'll tell you, I'm taking one heck of a ribbing from my kids about being a distinguished alumni here because of the record that they know that I have. So I appreciate you elevating me in my children's mind as well. Thank you very much.